The March 11th, 2025 work session of the Anne Arundel County Council is called to order. Do any of my colleagues have any questions before we begin? Based on the Section 3305B1 of the General Provisions Article of the Annotated Code of Maryland, the Council is permitted to meet in closed session to discuss the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation, or performance evaluation of appointees, employees, or officials over whom this public body has jurisdiction. Furthermore, based on Section 3305B7 of the General Provisions Article of the Annotated Code of Maryland, the Council is permitted to meet in closed session to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice. May I have a motion to meet in closed session pursuant to Sections 3305B1 and 3305B7 to discuss a personnel matter related to an appointed employee of the County Council and to meet with legal counsel to obtain legal advice with the Legislative Counsel to the County Council, Meredith Beach?
So moved. Allison Pickard.
Ledbetter, second.
Madam Secretary, please call the roll to hold a closed meeting in accordance with the sections stated.
Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
Mr. Volke is absent. Ms. Fiedler is absent. Ms. Radvan.
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith is absent. And Ms. Hummer.
Aye.
4 in the affirmative, 3 absent. The motion to hold a closed session pursuant to the accordance with the section stated has passed.
Okay, we will now adjourn our special meeting to go into closed session until 10 a.m. Following the closed session, we will reconvene in the chambers to hold our March 11th work session. The County Council is now convened to hold the legislative portion of the March 11th work session. We will begin with a staffing presentation from Police Chief Allen.
Good morning, and thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the invitation to provide an update or an overview on our police department's current staffing levels, highlighting the areas we've identified that would enhance our workforce and improve operational efficiency. As you can see, I brought a little bit of backup here with me in the event we need to answer some technical questions. So I have the Assistant Chief, Bill Lowry, here with me, and obviously you know Mr. Henry Farrell, who oversees budget. Next slide. Oh, we're there. Of course, adequate staffing is crucial for maintaining public safety.
Chief, excuse me just a second. Could you move the microphone a little bit closer to you?
Sure.
Thank you.
I get to do this one? I would do this one. Okay. All right. So I got to borrow yours, Henry. Yes, ma'am. So again, thank you. You can hear me now? Awesome. Adequate staffing is crucial for maintaining public safety, responding to critical incidents in a timely fashion, and obviously building trust within our community. I'll outline current staffing levels and then highlight some challenges we faced and present a vision for where we need to be in the future. Together, I know that we can ensure that our police department is appropriately equipped to meet the demands of our growing population while maintaining a safe environment. So, next slide, please. Currently, you can see we're authorized for 809 sworn police officer positions. And to date, we have 51 vacancies. Just last month, we were at 47. So that number fluctuates. But there's hope on the horizon. We see a light at the end of the tunnel. As of March 10th, we have a total of 121 officers who are held in what we call a not operational status. This number includes our 51 vacancies, and it represents police officers who are either medically incapable of working, our military deployments, recruits in our police academy, or new probationary police officers who are assigned to a field training officer and not yet necessarily prepared to be out alone by themselves. Not operational status applies to officers who have not worked for 30 consecutive days or more. Officers who've been away from work for less than 30 days do not qualify as not operational officers. Over the last 5 years, on a monthly basis, an average of 35 officers have been not operational. And again, this number fluctuates, creating a staffing deficit in addition to our current vacancies. So you would add 35 plus whatever the number of our current vacancies are. Next slide. We all know this, but I'm going to repeat it because we represent the best damn police department in this country. But we also know what our community expects from us. They expect us to not only uphold the law, but to serve as a vital partner in creating a safe and inclusive Anne Arundel County. These expectations encompass professional training, transparency, accountability, and proactive community and law enforcement engagement from a police department that prioritizes fostering trust and understanding through outreach, education, and collaboration. Our community also expects prompt and fair responses to incidents, as well as the ability to voice concerns and provide input on policing strategies. And you're very familiar with some of those bodies, which would be our Citizens Advisory Council or our PCRCs at the district levels. And ultimately, we know that our community desires a police department that reflects the values and diversity of all whom we serve, ensuring that every individual feels protected and respected. So you'll see in 2015, our department requested that the International Association of Chiefs of Police, IACP, conduct a staffing study. That 247-page document was completed and delivered to our department in March of 2017. Those findings recommended that our department increase our authorized strength to 824 police officers to meet the operational needs of our department and the community. And that our officers, they recommend, would spend at least a third of their time responding to active calls for service, a third of their time conducting proactive enforcement and community engagement, and then the remaining third of their time performing administrative responsibilities, which have increased with the advent of the technologies we've implemented within our department. In 2023, our department conducted an internal study utilizing the same methodology from ICP's 2015 staffing study. And those results yielded that our department's authorized strength should be 1,187 police officers, with consideration for the county's growth and the increased demands and responsibilities of our police officers and supervisors, and again, some of which have resulted from implementing technology and increased reporting requirements, whether it's body-worn camera or use of force documentation. Of course, the county is a growing community, and we are uniquely situated between two major metropolitan regions, Washington, D.C. and Baltimore. We experience the influx and the displacement at our borders. We have our own issues and crime within our county, but we also see them come from, when I say them, the criminal element come from the District of Columbia, the city of Baltimore, and mainly using 295, the main thoroughfares of Route 50, but they have direct access to Anne Arundel County. And since the release of this study 10 years ago, in addition to our crime-fighting efforts within Anne Arundel County, our police officers, again, have taken on cross-jurisdictional crimes, recovering more illicit drugs and firearms than in the previous 10 years. And you're fully aware in the warmer months, what we experience in addition to young people being out for the summer months, is these illicit car rallies that occur throughout not just Anne Arundel, but our region. And we all allocate resources to address those issues nearly every weekend in the warmer months, not exclusive to summer, because it could go into fall. But the point is by directing our resources toward these issues, we're taking away from a patrol officer's normal responsibility, essentially taking away from work they should be performing in our communities for our residents. Next slide, please. As an integral part of fulfilling our mission, it's my responsibility in concert with our departmental leadership to determine the minimum staffing resources required to deliver essential law enforcement services. Our policies mandate that we allocate and distribute personnel according to service demands based on documented workload assessments to effectively and efficiently deliver law enforcement services to our victims of crime, our residents, our businesses, and all who choose to visit Anne Arundel County. This process requires constant review by unit commanders and is performed as part of the department's annual budget development process. As you're aware, last year, we scaled back some of our specialized services to increase our staffing levels in patrol. And that's not a problem or issue unique to Anne Arundel County. This is a national issue. As we move forward, we recognize the department must chart a path forward and grow with the community as the community continues to grow, restoring our specialized services that our community has come to expect to address our operational and community needs. Next slide. Our least favorite subject, officer separation and attrition from service. On average, as you can see, 50 police officers, sworn officers, separate from our agency each year, either as a result of retirement, resignation, or termination. Officers become eligible to retire after dedicating 20 years of service or by meeting the age requirement, that is age 50. Some officers opt to enter the Deferred Retirement Option Program or the DROP program, affording officers the opportunity to serve an additional 7 years. Currently, more than 20% of our officers at the senior level are eligible to retire. It's a lot of institutional knowledge, and they don't necessarily go, but they're eligible to go. The next slide you see will reflect those eligibility numbers from January 1st of this year through December of 2026. And that number, as you can see, fluctuates over time. Now, that 177 from January of 2025 doesn't mean that that's the number of officers leaving that month, but they're eligible. And then it progresses on down to 207 at the end of 2026. Again, you can see from this sheet, that we experience an average reduction of 50 police officers each year. And again, either as a result of a normal or medical retirement, resignation, or termination. And I'll just pause for a moment as you look through this chart.
Madam Chair, I have a question. On the bottom of that chart, when you're going month to month, is it 177 in January plus 176?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
That number fluctuates. So
How do you go down in eligible retirees? Okay.
Do you want to hear that response? Hire younger people. No, just kidding. The number fluctuates. Perhaps a person left.
Okay.
If I may, it's because between January and February, there's a mandatory retirement if someone is in the DROP program. So that person has to leave.
That explains it.
The number that you see there are just the officers that have the appropriate number of years, so that it would make them eligible if they wanted to take that option. There's 176 that could leave in February. Don't have to, but they could leave.
Got it. That explains what I was
So a
looking
senior
for.
person
Yep.
opted to leave.
May I ask a question too? So, I mean, I don't want anybody watching at home to read anything into what I'm saying. I'm going to preface it with that because I know there's people watching and I know they read into questions. But here's my question to you. It seems like every time we add time to drop, we're doing two things, right? We're creating what we would call a retention mechanism that hopefully will keep people to stay, but we're also creating this sort of greater exposure, for lack of a better word, because you now have more officers who are with the department longer, all of whom are eligible at any moment to be able to say, hey, I'm going to head out. I think I've done my time. I'm good. So it sort of is a two-edged sword. Like, as good as it is to keep that experienced, great crop of officer that we want to keep, we also are, in some ways, creating a workforce that is less locked in, for lack of a better word. And I don't mean that in any negative to a police officer. I just mean everybody has to weigh for themselves at some point. Am I going to stay or am I going to go? And that's a personal decision. So I guess that's what I'm seeing here looking at this. Is it a little bit of, we're going from 177 to 207 potential officers who could retire. That's a big scary exodus liability. Like that's hanging out there. We're losing 50 officers a year on average. We're literally hiring classes that are just keeping up with what we see in retirements. We're not growing. Like this whole presentation scares me more than makes me feel good about the county. You know, and I don't mean that to be like alarmist. Maybe that's your point. I don't know,
No,
but it's
not
working.
at all. So the intent is not to scare. We're
Okay.
educating, but this is not, again, unique to Anne Arundel County. Our
Okay.
ACP conducted a retention and recruitment study most recently. And one of the things that I was going to get to, one of the points is for senior officers who in years past would stay beyond their required years of service, be it 20 or 25 years, because of the national sentiment over the last, since 2019
Yeah.
into 2020,
Yeah.
the survey revealed that most tenured officers who are eligible to leave rather than stay opt to leave. They're done. So that's the reality we're in. Fortunately, we have a great department and we're not seeing those folks leave us. When they leave, as you heard the assistant chief say, it's because they have reached that maximum level of years in the drop program and they have to go. So we're not seeing a mass exodus. We're just letting you all know that these are the folks who could, once they become eligible to go, they make the decision to stay or go. And that's our job, to try to retain them as best we can.
Can I ask one quick follow-up? I promise it'll be quick. So, what's the solution to hiring more officers in classes to almost overhire, similar to what I think the fire department's doing? Because like I'm looking at your numbers. I mean, the number. Well, I am, but
It's okay.
sorry, I apologize. But like, you got all these applicants, and then you winnow it down to the number that's hired. And the number I'm getting in the 100th recruit class was 2.9%. In the 101st recruit class, it was 2.3%, right? So like, you have a lot of people you're bringing in, and a very small number that are actually getting hired. So like, how do we change that to get you more officers?
So over the years, and again, the study speaks to exactly that point, due to the national sentiment, I'll say the quality of applicant that all of us throughout the country have been receiving, they don't meet our minimum standards. And that's why you see the numbers go from this great number from recruitment efforts down to something so small. We take pride in our agency, and rather than have to separate someone because eventually they are of no good to the agency, we're very selective in our hiring process.
Yeah,
And
and
contribute to that.
having done this for now 53 years, you'll see in law enforcement there are pendulum swings that occur within hiring. A lot of it has to do with a national narrative that takes place, perhaps, and that's what we're in the midst of right now. Like the chief said, this is a nationwide issue. That there's kind of a sense of folks not wanting to be in law enforcement. And so we have to battle that every day. We have and the chief will talk about in just a second, our recruiting challenges. We're going out trying to make the job as lucrative as possible, not so much financial, although financial aspects are certainly important, but people have to have the desire and the want to be law enforcement officers, and that has waned a little bit. It's starting to come back to center a little bit, and I'm not talking politics, it's just the hiring aspect of it. So you're right, we are keeping our head just above water right now as far as the attrition rate and the ability to bring in quality and capable candidates, not only through our basic hiring, but through the lateral and comparative compliance, which the council has been very, very helpful with us on getting some of those opportunities for those folks that have those law enforcement experience. So we're keeping our head right above water right now as far as being able to put that number above 809.
It's better than drowning, but we like to see even more. So you guys are doing great.
Well, there's hope on the horizon. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. And again, all this is highlighted in the ICP's report. The global pandemic, people found a new way to work. So people work from home. So why go risk my life to be a police officer when I can have this high-tech job at home and work from, the comfort of home? There are various, widely publicized incidents that it discouraged and dissuaded folks from wanting to be the police. And that's where we are. And you heard the assistant chief speak to the pendulum. So we're seeing a bit of hope on the horizon just by looking at our numbers. And we'll get to that on the next slide. But it obviously takes a commitment from all of us. And I've said this before, we could speak to join our department. It's the best damn police department in the country. We know it is, but we need the voice of all of us, all corners of our community, our elected officials, to tell our story. And it's a lot different than a lot of jurisdictions.
Ms. Rappian.
Thank you. Would you mind going back to that last slide? I have one question
Yes,
about
ma'am.
it, or maybe a couple questions. So it looks like over the past couple years, the attrition rate or the separation rate has gone down. And I have lots of theories about that, probably related to us having the best damn police department in the country. But I also, on the flip side, this is similar to what Mr. Volke was mentioning. Does that concern you that, we may be creating a bubble? That, I think you saw a sort of similar phenomenon in 2021 with respect to COVID. And these numbers are, almost incremental, but then when you're going from 58 to 38, that's not quite so incremental over a few years. And so, and I can certainly understand what happened to 21. In 21, I think that happened in a lot of professions.
Right.
I know we experienced that in the education world. People that were close to retirement said, "Hey, this may be the right time to step aside." But and it's fantastic that that number is going down. But does that concern you or at all? Should we be concerned that at some point that number is going to catch up with us, and hopefully not all at once?
We wish we could predict that, but
I'm saying is all of us, and maybe this is already on your radar, but as a council, we need to prepare for that too, to make sure that, and I think that's already in what you're doing in terms of, doing everything you can to recruit.
yes, ma'am. And we recruit from my office on to our patrol officers, all of us. We know it's on all of us to recruit. But again,
One of the things that may have contributed to that is the fact that the years in the drop program was increased by a year. So that helped. And then police officers who are, because we have a wonderful police department. So some officers, they leave looking to go to other agencies. And obviously we're blowing our own horn. That option, I don't believe, is as prevalent as it used to be. Anne Arundel County, without question, is one of the finest organizations I've ever worked for in my life. And I think you're seeing officers realize that, plus the additional year on the drop. I think that could be attributable to that number there, certainly.
right now we have two officers, young officers, who decided to go to other agencies. One went to two different agencies, and they're both back in the hiring process because the grass isn't always greener. They do go out and they see what other organizations offer or don't offer, and they return to this department. And you've heard, I don't need to sell our department to you. You know how professional and how well respected this agency is, not only in this region, but this country. And we can tell them all day long because really, consider, I come from Prince George's County in the city of Heights. So I worked in two good jurisdictions. This is by far the best agency that I've been blessed to work for. And I'm speaking to you from my heart on that. Like, I've had experience elsewhere, and I've not seen the level of dedication, love for the agency, love for the community, and love from the community that I've seen here in Anne Arundel County. Ready for the next slide? I keep saying it because it's true. There's hope on the horizon. So that next slide.
You go to the next one, Chief.
Yeah. All right. So have you had an opportunity to look at this slide just yet? So what you see in blue, illustrated in blue, represents the 100th recruit class. They are in our police academy. This is their 18th week now. And you see the 101st recruit class highlighted in that golden yellow. They begin March 27th. So what we see is an increase in every category. And you can see the percentages of every category where comparing the 100 to the 101st, where we've improved just most recently. One of the reasons is we attribute to the work that our executive team and the Office of Personnel has done in terms of the written exam and making it more accessible for applicants. So we transitioned from requiring recruits or applicants to come to Anne Arundel County to take an actual written exam to an online written exam with a proctor monitoring the individual. So they're taking the exam and not required to fly in from outside of Anne Arundel County, or if they live in Anne Arundel County and South County seems too far for them, they're not driving South County to take the test. They're taking it online. So you see an exponential increase in the percentage of folks who are applying. And that number for the 102nd is probably around 1,000 from what we're being told by our I want to sing him praises, Corporal Josh DeBrock. He is our recruiter. And that man traverses this entire country beating our drum. Now, he has other folks who are decentralized recruiters helping him, but I love that he commits to the individuals he has conversations with, and he follows through with them. I've watched him do that personally, and he builds relationships with those folks. So he works, but it comes from a place of doing good for our agency and getting the right people in the room and applying to our department. But again, you can just see the difference that one process has made in increasing the numbers. And I'm not taking away from the fact that our administration and our union representation came to the table and agreed that we would increase our starting salary, the highest in the state of any county agency, to $70,000. So that's what we believe had an impact on why we see our numbers going up. And I don't want to do the human aspect of this service and just credit it to money and a test, because it's the people and the quality of the individuals that we have connecting with potential applicants that truly makes a difference. And our reputation's out there. We don't have to beat our drum. It's out there. I know as I traverse the state, I hear compliments from agency heads all the time. I hear compliments from officers about our department. It's out there. It's out there. Not every department has the love and support of their administration. Not every department is blessed like that. But in our case, you can talk to anyone about our department and they will sing us praises. So
I have a question for you about, I think you're getting this to the fitness test, the agility test that's there. Yes, I know that the military has seen a huge increase in eligible recruits because they identified people that needed some extra help in passing the physical standards, and they worked with them to meet those. So when we look at these numbers, you do have a gap between those who pass the written and then who pass the agility. Do y'all have any type of training program to get them ready for that?
Yes, ma'am. As a matter of fact, we do. And we do just that. For those who aren't necessarily prepared, we do work with them. We have a gym right down there at our academy, and we work with them to get them up to where they need to be. And we don't discount them or, disregard them because they're not able to get through the physical agility. We, again, work with them to get them where they need to be so that they do pass. But these are just recent things that, the executive team, our rank and file, sit down and brainstorm, hey, what could we do to help get more people in, in the application process? And that was one of the things, one of the ideas that was offered. So that's a recent implementation. We should see better progress probably next year. But the key highlights, obviously the hiring bonus is an incentive. That's $10K. Employees get a $1K bonus for any referral that takes on employment with us and gets through their first year. Thankfully, the council saw fit to implement the 5-year service transfer. That is, and Exactly. That has been a large attraction for officers from other jurisdictions who would rather be here than where they are currently. And that's not to diminish or take away from any other agency, no disrespect to them, but happy employees come to work. That physical agility preparedness program, the take-home car program, we did reduce our hiring time frame. It was 9 months. We reduced it to 6 months. Most agencies are at 3 months. So we've experienced incremental progress. We're being patient with ourselves, but our goal is to get to 3 as well, but without compromising our standards. Now, we're ready for the next slide. Oh, that's it. Do you want me to talk more?
Madam Chair.
So that's it. So we'll take any questions.
Ms. Pickard?
So when do you know, like you just said, the new 101st class is going into the academy on March 27th. Mm-hmm. Do you know when the next academy class, is that already, is there already a date certain?
That will be the 102nd. Generally, we run 3 academies each year.
Okay.
So they're not back to back, essentially. So there may be a small gap in between the time they come.
I ask because as people are planning their career path and they're looking at graduating from college or wherever they're coming into the academy from, obviously reducing that, it would be great to have that 3 months, but then also have a date certain of what class they're going into to plan their life.
I just don't have that today to provide for you. But
No, I'm not looking for the actual date. I'm just thinking as your recruiters are out on college campuses or people are thinking about their life, like, okay, I'm going to do all the steps I need and I'm going to aim for the 102nd class or.
Right. When the recruiters go out, they have 3 classes ahead of them. They know what the dates are. So if a person is looking, if they're let's say they're in their 3rd year of college right now, but they still want to be involved, those target dates are already established because we have so many course curriculums that we have to schedule with the Maryland Police Training Commission. We have to have those dates set. So yes, ma'am, those dates are there. Also, we have the pre-hire that was approved. That's going to be a huge benefit to us when we have people that are in that pipeline, but they're having to wait 3, 4, 5 months. If another police department can come to them and say, hey, look, we can get you in 2 months with this pre-hire capability that was approved, that's a huge benefit. We're just talking with some of those folks that were just recently involved in that program, and that was the big determining factor. They were ready to go to another organization, but because we were ready to hire them right now in a pre-hire capability, that's another huge benefit. So we're seeing those things hopefully gradually take effect to get that pendulum back to where we need it. When I started in 2013 here with this police department, we were in the mid-40s with our recruit class. And now the one that's getting ready to be implemented is 20. So we were down to 9 at one point. And that's how far that pendulum swung. So we're starting to see it come back. Well, that's what the chief's talking about.
Yeah, my first year here was 2020, but 2021 we graduated the first class since I took over the helm, and that was a class of 50. It seemed close to 50,
right.
And that was the last time we saw those numbers. After that, the numbers dropped exponentially. Again, hope on the horizon. You just heard the assistant chief say the 101st has 20 recruits that are going to begin on March 27th. In the 100th, we have 10. So you're seeing the number trend upward. On the 99th, we had 11. The number is gradually trending upward. It's going to take time with all the things that we implemented, but that pre-hire has been very helpful. We met a couple of the young folks who were assigned to headquarters, so they're not just sitting around, they're actually performing work, whether it's in records or they're at a district station, they're learning about the department. In fact, I can't, mention the Real-Time Information Center enough. They sit in the Real-Time Information Center as well to learn, because eventually you're going to become a patrol officer. You need to learn this new resource is very helpful for the work they perform. So we're excited about the potential for growth. It looks like we are trending upward. We're going to continue to track to see how the changes that we've implemented, and there's a litany, a list of them. If you want it, I can provide it later. Just the changes that we see that have helped us get to 20 recruits. That's the most we've had since 2021.
Well, you read my mind. That was my next question about the pre-hire, the whatever. Thank you for that. And this was absolutely excellent. So thank you for being here today and sharing this with us.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Chief, for coming down. Appreciate it, Madam Chair. Couple things. One, here's where the only thing I disagree on that slide deck was the reference to the 2015 829 or whatever they said we should be at. Hopefully that's not your feeling of where we should be at, because Anne Arundel County 100% should be at 1,200 authorizations. That is, I can show you the math on why that number is the ideal number of police authorizations for the county. Even if you include the percentage of that who are going to be sick or medical reasons, things like that, that brings you down to 1,100, which is 300 more than what we have now. Now you have, if you separate those 300 across the 4 districts, now you're looking at least 100 per station. So you're adding like 20 to 25 more officers per station over a 24-hour period. Mm-hmm. And so that is how you get community policing done. That is how you get some of these nuisance crime, because we've seen significant hardcore crime like death decrease-ish, but these petty crimes go up. I spoke to an 81-year-old 3 days ago who called. She emailed me, and literally we talked on the phone like 5 minutes later. And she spoke about how, some vandalism and things like that were happening. I spoke to her about how proud we are about the Arctic, and I can't wait till it's like fully operational 24/7. And wanted to make sure some of her community members knew about being able to integrate into that, whether it's an individual house or a business. So I can't wait till we get to the day where we can say 1,200 authorized police officers here in Anne Arundel County. I will stand on that number all day long. The second thing is, so that's me saying that 829, when they did that, I was like, what? I think they were looking at the constraints of Anne Arundel County fiscally and what a number we thought the county executive at the time would like to get us at least to drive the number upward. But 1,200 is where we should be at for Anne Arundel. With 600,000 citizens, 1,200 sworn police officers will be sufficient to handle the crime and activities that we have here in this county. So just wanted to make that note. The second piece was the current administration, federal administration, is on target to release some 200,000 federal employees, 200,000. They're probably in the ballpark of 150, if not more, already, who have either chosen to resign or retire, somewhere around there. If you look at the GS pay grade for a lot of those employees, especially some of the younger ones, they're right in the ballpark of police officers. So we have a perfect opportunity to recruit and go after a significant amount of federal employees who are potentially able to pass the fitness test, and as well as academically pass all of the written exams and verbal exams as well. And so I would encourage you to craft some messaging that targets those folks who, they may have lost their job at the federal level, but they can continue to serve Anne Arundel County, and this is the perfect opportunity for them to serve here at the local level. And so fill those 51 position vacancies that we have, and then we will help to get that number up to 1,200. So
Sir,
thank you.
Thank you, sir. And if I may, how many police chiefs or executive team leaders have direct contact, do you think have direct contact with their recruiting officer? How many, if you had to guess? I don't know the number, but I know that I didn't tell Corporal DeBrock that I was coming here this morning. He's at a recruitment event right now. He sent me a picture, and he does this all the time. He sent me a picture of where he is. It's a job fair. And yes, we're on it. We're very much aware that, unfortunately, there have been many people who have lost their jobs, their livelihood. And yes, so they are a focus for us, because somewhere in those numbers, there is someone who wants to answer the call to serve. And we intend to get them. So we're going to keep doing our best to bring the best and brightest, as Corporal DeBrock likes to say, to Anne Arundel County. And regarding the 824, 10 years ago, we know that this community has grown. Our agency should grow with the community. You all are aware of the staffing crisis that we were impacted by. It tore me up that we had to disband our PACT units at the district stations. Like, I came in and I had an agenda, and I called it the 3 C's, created a Bureau of Community Services, assigned more PACT officers to each of the district stations, because I know, having been a community officer myself, how important it is to have our officers out there engaged with the community. And I know the districts are feeling the impact, but we had no choice because we had to staff patrol. Patrol is our focus. Again, we see hope on the horizon, but the moment we do onboard more officers, my intent is to replenish those positions because they're so necessary. A lot of folks don't understand what they do, but they are relational. They build relationships. They connect with folks. They problem solve. They do the fun stuff in the community too, but their role is just as important as our cops on the street fighting crime every day. Community policing is a part of crime fighting. Thank you.
So, yes, I love the PAC unit, and recently in my neighborhood, the police came to check something. It wasn't serious, but they were wonderful as always and so professional. But one of the officers who came was one of my favorite PACT officers who I hadn't seen in a while, and who I used to see everywhere when I was out. And it was so great to see her and thank her and see how she's still serving our community out there. So I just want to put that plug in. And to say, and I think we all agree to this, when I'm out in the community, what I hear from people is they want to see more of the police, not less. They appreciate them and all the work you've done to build the community for there. And the numbers are very clear. We need more of you. So thank you for your efforts for this, and we'll support that as much as we can. Do I have any other questions or comments from council, or anything else from y'all? From you, Chief?
I will say this. You know that the Real-Time Information Center has been a priority for us, and you've experienced it. And our number one priority right now is staffing that 24/7. Right now, we trend with the trends, but we want to provide a full-time contingency of folks. So we're working in concert with the administration to get us there over the next 2 cycles. Okay.
Madam Chair.
Good.
I think I appreciate you plugging that. That's a really important resource multiplier. I think that's a great way to talk about the Real-Time Information Center. I've seen it twice now in action, and it's really impressive. And I agree, we need to get it staffed.
Yes, ma'am. And we understand, yes, technology. We were just having this conversation yesterday. It may be a buzzword for some folks, but the reality is we need to get used to that buzzword, and that's AI. It's coming. It's going to be a part of future policing. We'll be gone, most of us, from our professions. Not all of us, but it's coming. And I believe it's going to come for us, incorporated in the work that we do sooner than later. I say, it's a long time coming. It is. And it's going to be our reality because it helps streamline processes for us. Whereas we would have to do manual data searches ourselves, AI can get it done like that for us. And again, the Real-Time Information Center is a huge resource for us, for our patrol officers, and that's their primary focus is our patrol cops. But it does not replace an actual police officer. It serves to support, right? So I know the Assistant Chief has a comment.
Just kind of in closing, having done this for 53 years, coming up on 73 years of age, it has been an absolute honor to be a member of this organization. Like I said, I've worked in the federal system, county, and municipal policing. It's the finest organization I've ever worked for. You have a tremendous police department. Technology is one of those things that will bring that pendulum back to center, hopefully. But the last thing, when we go to all of our roll calls, when we talk to our patrol officers, there's two messages that we send. Establish community contacts. Make sure that you treat people with dignity and respect and that you're policing constitutionally. The other thing is we tell them to hold the line. And that is something that we have to do, and we do that. I'm very proud of the work that, when I say I speak for everybody that's on this police department, the executive staff. These officers are out here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days. When I put my head on the pillow last night, that's the last prayer that I gave was for the safety of those officers that are out there working midnights right now. So we are an anomaly in the Baltimore-Washington area with the crime rate that we have. One crime is one too many, but we're surrounded by high crime areas, and our officers, we tell them when they have to hold that line on the crime fight, and that's something that's inherent in police officers, regardless of what the resources are, what the pay structure is, what it is. That's in our heart, and we try to serve and protect people every day. So, really, thank you all for the opportunity. This may be my last time of being able to address you, so it's been an absolute honor. It really has.
I'm sorry. Are you making some? We're not ready for that announcement, sir.
Well, my wife may be. That's the issue. So I love her to death, and I've been married 53 years to her. So it's I have this conversation with Chief every day. I'm kind of one of those day-to-day type person. I'm 73 years old, but we have quality people on this police department that are coming up through the ranks. As long as we have this chief of police here, we're good. And, and folks like y'all, I really appreciate you. I really do.
Thank you, Chief. I don't want to neglect Henry if Henry has something to say. He's not a touchy-feely kind of guy, but do you have anything for us, Henry? No, you're good. You hear me say it all the time. It rings true for all of us. We're blessed to serve. We love this department. We love our people, and we believe in being present for them. We're all out in the community, but we're also present for them. They know we love them, and they know we believe in them, and we never wavered on them. So thank you for your time and hearing from us.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, the chief is going to override your wife and make you stay. All right. We will now welcome up the administration. Bill number 1725. An ordinance concerning Snug Harbor Waterways Improvement District. Mr. Hunt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ethan Hunt for the administration. With me, I have Lori Blair Klossmeyer, Deputy County Attorney, and Janae Molden from the Budget Office, who's the Management Assistant. So this is a very straightforward bill. Snug Harbor is a special community benefits district located in Councilmember Ledbetter's district, District 7. Basically, their SCBD, one of the benefits that they have are members of the SCBD have access to individual boat slips. And so each address in the SCBD that has this benefit is listed in the county code, and the community is petitioning to switch out one of the addresses in the community for a boat slip. So it's removing one address and adding another address. Petitions have been submitted by at least 75% of the property owners, as well as both property owners who are affected by this legislation.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Thank you. Hi, Mr. Hunt. I know we spoke about this briefly on the phone.
Yep.
I just wanted to bring that conversation out for the public. This was by request, right? The owner who's being removed wants to be removed.
Yes.
The owner who wants the slip wants the slip.
Yes.
And follow up, if I may, Madam Chair. Yes. Are these slips are owned by the tax district and utilized as a benefit? Would that be an accurate way of thinking of it?
I believe they're owned by the community association.
Okay.
And yeah, so the owners that have access to them or benefited by
So
those
it's
slips.
an access, it's not,
An
this
ownership.
house owns the slip, it's not tied into the property value or the mortgage or
Right.
anything along those lines. I just want to make sure we're clear on that.
Every so often, somebody gives up their slip, somebody else gets it. We do one of these bills every few years for that situation.
That was my understanding. I just wanted to make sure I was crystal clear because there's implications, obviously, if it's tied to the value of the home.
Sure.
So,
Yep.
all right. And the petition, we reached the threshold, correct? We as the county, or they as the special tax
district,
district.
yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on that bill? All right. Mr. Hunt, bill number 1825.
Certainly. So joining me at the table will be Kelly Kenny, our supervising county attorney, and Lynn Miller, our assistant planning and zoning officer. You may remember back earlier, well, I guess in the fall, when we were having the discussion around Bill 7524, which revised the mixed-use districts, there was some discussion about requiring sector studies for different areas that were subject to the mixed-use bill. So this bill comes out of those discussions, and basically it requires that any lot designated as a mixed-use planned land use in the region plans adopted between May and December of last year, which are regions 2, 4, and 7, may not be administratively rezoned to mixed use unless a sector study or plan for that lot has been completed, and recommends rezoning to a mixed-use district. And going forward, it requires that a region plan adopted between January 1st of this year and the end of December of next year, if the region plan recommends a sector plan or study for a lot designated as a mixed-use planned land use, the lot may not be administratively rezoned unless the sector plan or study is completed and recommends that rezoning. Happy to answer any questions.
Ms. Rabia.
Thank you. I apologize if this is already out there because this is a relatively new bill for us. Would it be possible to get a map of impacted areas?
Certainly.
Obviously not right this minute, but
Yes.
if we don't already have one, and I apologize if we do, and I missed it. So that would be very helpful for us to just be able to visually see right off the bat what areas are impacted.
Mr. Volk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank the administration. I was a big driver in this particular piece of legislation because for my district, I had some concerns about mixed use that had not, I was worried that the bill we did in the fall would cause some issues to areas that had not been intended to be mixed use in the plan. So we can certainly, I think Mr. Hunt can get that for you, but I will tell you that was the main driver for me. And so I appreciate the administration working with me on this legislation to bring it forward so that we can make sure if there is going to be some sort of an administrative rezoning, that there is at least some study that is done before that can be moved forward by the property owner. So I just wanted to give you that context publicly and for anybody in my district if they want to know what this is about. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Bill number 1925, second quarter transfer. Mr. Hunt.
I'm just going to move over one chair because I need to make room at the table. Thank you, Madam Chair. Ethan Hunt for the administration. Bill, and joining me at the table will be Lori Blair Klossmeyer from the Office of Law, our Deputy County Attorney. From Budget, Stephen Thoreau, our Assistant Budget Officer. From the Department of Public Works, Christian Bender, who's the Chief of the Bureau of Highways, and Rich Bowen, who's our Solid Waste Recycling Manager. I also have Skip Alden, who's the CEO of Anne Arundel County Public Libraries, and Cedric Grant, who's the Chief Financial Officer of Anne Arundel County Public Libraries, and Aaron Karpowitz, who's the CEO of Anne Arundel Community Development Services. So this bill is the second quarter transfer and supplementary appropriation bill for fiscal year 2025 under the county charter. Transfers between offices and departments have to be approved by the county council by ordinance. So this ordinance approves a number of supplementary transfers and appropriations. So we have $481,600 of community development fund, which is coming from unappropriated fund balance within the FY 2023 Emergency Rental Assistance Program. There's an appropriation of $598,500 of Farmington Village Special Tax District Fund, which is funded from unappropriated fund balance within the Fund for Bond Redemption and General Fund Transfer. There's an appropriation of $769,000 of waste collection fund, which is from unappropriated fund balance within the fund for emergency curbside collection, and that's a result of the interruption of service provided by Ecology Services as a result of that strike. And then an appropriation of $2,960,100 in the general fund, which is transferred from the CAO contingency fund to the Department of Public Works for snow removal. And finally, an appropriation of $400,000 of the library fund, which is coming from unappropriated fund balance within the fund for unrealized turnover, a Maryland host fee, a labor attorney, and discovery library expansion. And we do have folks from all of those departments here to answer any questions in more detail.
All right, and I do hope that my colleagues have some questions because we got the whole gang here, and since they all came out, we need to make it worth their time. I want to know a little more about the waste, the strike that happened, and the money we're getting back. Because I will say that my community was impacted by that, and that was one of my questions during the time: is what will be the compensation to the county for that time, because that was not on our end that there was that work stoppage. So,
program manager, Public Works. So recouping, obviously the contractor that went on strike the 3 months that they were on strike, they were not paid. So that was funds that were utilized to pay for the emergency services. Some additional ARP grant money was available to go towards it, and then luckily, there was other savings within our budget that were less expenditure for yard waste processing. We're actually generating revenue on our single stream curbside recycling. So funds that were in the budget to use that to pay for processing costs, if we had any, can be used. So after putting all that together, all the available funds, what we project as a shortfall is a $700,000 shortfall. As far as compensation, I'm assuming you're asking from the contractor themselves. It was determined by the way the contract was written, Office of Law. It's under force majeure, so there's no recoup opportunity. I can say our new contracts we're putting out there is new stipulation in it where these prospective bidder, the winner, if they do utilize union employee, represented employees, they have to have a contract in place with that staff that matches the length of term for our contract. So the services that they're under contract for, they have to put labor in place to handle that length as well. So that we ensure, they should be doing their due diligence, make sure their staff's there to do the work. So, but hopefully your constituents, they're all very understanding. We appreciate that. So, and the contractors that came and stepped up and took care of the services. We moved the days a little bit, but for the most part, everybody got their stuff picked up. Maybe a day or two later than they're used to, but it was relatively uneventful for them.
no, I want to say y'all did an amazing job of keeping service running, and people got used to it, and it came a day or two late, but it went through. And I greatly appreciate the department for all the work you did to make sure that everything was still being picked up through something that was no fault of our own to have that. So it was definitely noticed and appreciated.
Okay. And a lot of you constituents might have received letters recently, postcards, notices. We rebid multiple service areas. The 3 that were involved with the strike we'll have new contractors coming up soon. And to make the routes even more efficient, we did some day changes. So any questions, we put a website out. Your aide should not receive email information on that. So we hope to even bump up the service even more. So 24. Right.
Excellent. Thank you. Mr. Volke, did you have?
I do.
Oh.
How much was the total? Sorry, I didn't mean to let you sit down. How much was the total cost that we want, like the savings? You said there were savings that you all found that you were able to utilize. So the
total emergency contract expenses?
Yeah.
$8.4 million.
That's what I thought. I knew it was millions of dollars. So you all had somewhere in the range of $7.6 roughly million in other savings that you were able to find in your budget without having to tap into this second quarter transfer.
As well as some ARP grant money was available.
Okay, all right. In terms of the force majeure, so I mean that's an interesting contract theory. I mean I get it, but that's the Office of Law's position, is that we're just going to eat that.
I mean, there may be some litigation going on that I'm not aware of, you know, I'm just recycling program manager.
I mean, I don't mean to put that question to you, but wow, that's disappointing is what I'll say. You know, if that's the position the Office of Law is going to take. Not your fault, not your problem. I'm just making a statement publicly.
Moving forward, we try to
Good.
get rid of that
Okay.
clause.
That's all I had on that one. Thank you very much.
Anything else from me before?
Madam Chair, if I can clarify, Councilman Volke, to start from the $8.5 million number that we kind of started at. As he mentioned, we didn't pay for those contractors when they weren't doing the work, so that was a savings of almost $3 million that would come out of that number. The ARP grant that this council went through the approval process was another $3.3 million. So in terms of savings they found within their budget, it was a little under $2 million. So that's how you kind of reconcile those numbers.
Right. Any other questions? Ms. Pickard?
Well, as we're picking up new contractors, is there language in contracts that are, if their employees go on strike, are we shoring up that loophole there?
But yeah, like I said, it has clause in there that if they're using union staff, their labor contract that they have with that staff, the term, the length of it must match the length of the contract they receive to do curbside services.
Thank you.
So they can't have something short of that in order to qualify to do the services. Just FYI, at this point, the vendors that will be handling those service areas are at this point not represented by union. But the clause is there if they were to become represented at some point during the contract, and change their staff to union staff, then that would take effect.
Mr. Volke?
Certainly. All right. I have more questions about the bill. I thought we were just talking about the waste management part of it. Okay. So the $200,000 that's in the library fund that's coming out for the labor attorney, does that relate to the decision of the library staff to unionize? And does that have then a trickle-down effect? Is that why we need that attorney?
Yes.
Okay.
That's why. As you probably know, we were unionized at the beginning of the fiscal year, and we were not funded for that particular union attorney during our process last year. But this is going to be the funding for us to take care of the payment for her for this particular year.
Okay, and that's outside counsel. That's not in-house. That's contractual services.
Yes,
it
is.
Okay,
Yes, it is.
Got it. In terms of the Farmington Village Special Tax District, who can speak to that? Okay, what is that? I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's my district, because Farmington Village is in my district, but I'm not clear what this is.
So Farmington Village is a special tax district, as you know. So basically, they're paying off their bond, and that's about $500,000 of that.
Okay.
And then any excess revenue that they have, like other special taxing districts, comes back to the general fund. So that's about $100,000. So they're going to pay off the bond, and the rest of that is coming back to the general fund as a revenue source.
And what was the funding source of the money that's being used to pay off the bond? Was that from the
special tax that they do
right,
within that district?
Okay.
Yep.
So they don't get the money back. That $106,000 extra reverts to the county, even though it was paid by the people in that community for a particular thing.
Correct. And I think that's how all special taxing districts work in general. So the money that they generate through the special tax pays the debt service that we allowed them to do with the special tax, right, to generate the economic value of redoing all the capital work that they're doing within that special taxing district. And then every year in the fourth quarter transfer, you'll see several of these similar types of transfers from special taxing districts to the general fund as a revenue source, because revenue that's generated in excess of the requirements for that debt service comes to the general fund as a special tax. That's how special taxing districts, as far as I understand, are set up in general.
Yeah, I'm not trying to suggest anything untoward. I guess from a theoretical standpoint, sort of bigger picture, I'm looking at it going, how fair is it that everybody in Farmington paid into this? There's extra money, and then when it gets done, they don't get refunded that money. It goes to the general fund, which effectively means they're contributing for everybody else too. I don't. That's a higher level theory that isn't this particular situation, but we might have to look at that. All right. With the money that's going into the rental assistance program, is the funding source for that just unappropriated revenue that you all had that you're now? I think Mr. Trumbauer uses this.
Reality of it, I know.
How's
what-
that work? Yeah.
Sure. So I think and Ms. Karpowicz could probably speak maybe a little bit better, but in general, that money, and this is from fiscal year '23, came into the county through an award that that the county received
Through Treasury.
through the U.S. Treasury.
Okay.
And then essentially, in a perfect world, we would have sent that money out to ACDS in FY23. That never happened, so we're just kind of catching back up with an accounting. So we received the revenue. That revenue is here from the federal government. It's sitting on the county side. We need to transfer it over to kind of reimburse them for the work that they've done.
Understood. And it's that grant funding from Treasury is effectively earmarked for this purpose, meaning this is sort of special money for a special purpose that can't be used for anything else.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Right. Any other questions from my colleagues? Anything else from the administration? All right. I think we're good. The band can all leave. So, all right. Next is bill number 2025, zoning conditional uses, townhouse dwellings, and workforce housing. Mr. Hunt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ethan Hunt for the administration. Joining me at the table are Lynn Miller, our Assistant Planning and Zoning Officer, and Kelly Kenny, our Supervising County Attorney. This bill is to amend Section 18-10-174 of the County Code regarding conditional use requirements for workforce housing. So currently, the County Code mandates that the setback and height limitations for the R22 district, which is multifamily dwellings, applies to all workforce housing projects. However, the R22 bulk regulations, when they were initially crafted, were for multifamily dwelling projects, so they don't really address projects that are building workforce housing projects that are building townhomes. So this amendment is just to clarify which bulk regulations will be applied to townhomes and multifamily workforce housing projects. So it says that the setback and height limitations for workforce housing townhomes are those that are specified in Section 18-10-127, which applies to townhomes generally, so that they have a maximum height of 40 feet for the principal structure and a setback of 75 feet, unless the adjoining lot is an open space lot or open area lot, is zoned open space, or is located in either the same or a more intensive residential zone or in a non-residential zone, in which case the setback may be 30 feet. We're happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Ms. Pickard.
So I appreciate this clarifying bill for the workforce housing. I think it's important to note that workforce housing, the workforce housing bill that was passed in our first term, whichever bill that was, 5519 or whatever, set out a program, and homeownership workforce housing has not really been utilized much. So this is as projects come through, we learn all the issues related to how the original bill was crafted. So this is really just a cleanup of that. So it doesn't really change anything related to workforce housing. It doesn't intensify it. It doesn't diminish it in any way. It's just, is that an accurate statement? It's one of those things that we would probably have benefited from, like we did with the accessory dwelling unit bill, an annual report of how that workforce housing policy is actually working in the county. But maybe that's my next bill. We'll add that reporting requirement. Thank you. Thank you for this.
Madam Chair.
Ms. Fiedler.
Just for clarification, this is not just for R22 though, right? We're adjusting the bulk regs for R1, 2, and 5.
We're adjusting the bulk regs for townhomes that are workforce housing projects, which I'm not sure if they can be built in R1 or not, but Lynn Miller could probably answer that.
Correct. This is adjusting it for townhomes in the R1, R2, and R5 districts.
Okay, just wanted to make sure because I know we were talking about R22 a lot. So thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Next is bill number 2125. Ms. Fiedler, this is your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Give me one moment. This is a pretty simple bill, at least I think. right now, if you own a lot that is substandard, but you don't own the lot next door, you can develop on that lot. But if you own the lot next door, you cannot develop on the lot. This would allow the owner, if they had a combination of lots, to develop a substandard lot if the lot was of a minimum size, and it would be only for one single-family detached dwelling.
Okay. Are there any questions, comments from the administration?
Certainly. So we do have some concerns about this bill because I think it could increase density in certain areas. I'm going to turn it over to Lynn, who can talk in more detail.
Sure. The administration's concern about this bill is that it would allow additional dwellings to be built, potentially in many places around the county where they would not be allowed now because the lot is substandard. Particularly, this would impact properties in the RA, RLD, and R1 districts because those are the three districts that have a minimum lot size of 40,000 square feet. On July 1st, when the Housing Attainability Act passes, the minimum lot size in R1 will go down to 30,000 square feet. But nevertheless, those three zoning districts still have a minimum lot size that's above 20,000 square feet. So it is potentially allowing a number of properties that have an adjacent substandard lot to build additional home. And because they can't meet the requirement in Section C below that, one of which is that you have to be on public water and sewer, I think what this means then is this would be allowing additional homes on areas that would require septic tanks. So we feel like it's not a good precedent to establish, particularly right now when we're going through region plan and comprehensive zoning processes. That comprehensive zoning is the more appropriate avenue for someone who doesn't have the zoning that they need to develop a lot. So,
Madam Chair.
Ms. Fiedler.
Thank you. I'm definitely willing to work with the administration to see if we can find a compromise. I think, what I'm hearing is someone could be 15 square feet under and they can't develop even though they may be able to fulfill all of the requirements. I did specifically make it a larger size minimum lot. I mean, this is not trying to squeeze a square peg in a round hole in a lot. It's around half an acre of minimum lot size, which is considerable. I think I know I've experienced in District 5 big houses squeezed onto really tiny lots, and I certainly don't intend to do that. But I do think that there's an opportunity to create an avenue for some of these lots that are developable, but not by our standards in the code. So we'll be talking, I guess.
Absolutely.
All right. Bill number 2225, the Adequate Schools Facility School Utilization Chart. Mr. Hunt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ethan Hunt for the administration. With me at the table, Lynn Miller, our Assistant Planning and Zoning Officer, and Lori Blair Klossmeyer, our Deputy County Attorney. So this is a bill we have to do every year. I'm sure you are all familiar with it, but following the September 30th enrollment counts that are submitted by Anne Arundel County Public Schools to the state, we're required to submit a school utilization chart to the County Council by March 1st of each year, showing which schools are open and which schools are closed based on those projections. So that is this chart. There are no changes to this chart from the last version. So all the schools that were open remain open, and all the schools that were closed remain closed. We're happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? All right, that was an easy one.
Just a comment.
Oh, yes, Ms. Fiedler.
Be careful what you wish for. When we ask for a lot of data in the charts, now we have color-coded columns and rows. This is really advancing, so thank you.
I appreciated all that.
Yeah.
I used a black and white printer, so I had no idea it was color-coded.
So, All right. Next is Bill number 2325 around the Youth Advisory Council membership. Mr. Hunt?
Certainly, Madam Chair. So I think I'm solo on this one, or I have Lori Blair Klossmeyer, our Deputy County Attorney, with me. So this bill makes some revisions to the membership in terms of the Youth Advisory Council. The big one is eliminating the term limits, because we have currently the terms are 1 year and members are limited to 2 terms, which is really just 2 years. And we have some members who would like to continue participating in the Youth Advisory Council, some high school students. So this is getting rid of that term limit. The other thing the bill does, and I have had some conversations with the chair, and I'm certainly open to any amendments or suggestions on this, is that so the Youth Advisory Council is, I believe, 19 members. 11 of those members have to be from county public schools, and the remaining 8 are, sorry, I think I'm getting the numbers wrong, 19 voting members. Yeah, the remaining 8 are from a combination of homeschool students, private school students, members who are not students, and members who are enrolled in a institution of higher education in the county or a neighboring county. And so it increases the limit in each of those categories to 4, but you're still limited in total to 8 members from those 4 categories.
Yes, we spoke on this yesterday. I have a couple of concerns with this that I'd like to work with the administration on to address. Increasing the numbers to up to 4 from that. Right now, the percentages of representation on the committee for private school, homeschool, non-students, and higher education are higher. They already have higher representation on the committee than their actual numbers in the county. And by doubling this, for instance, that would make that homeschool representation could be nearly 5 times the representation on the committee than the actual percentage of homeschool students in the county. So I have some concerns on that that I'd like to address, but also on the term limits, the no term limits. This bill states that members can be on this committee from between the ages of 14 and 22. So if we have no term limits, we could have someone that technically could be on there for 8 years. And this is really a leadership opportunity for students. Yep. And I think opening it up to more students is valuable. So I think the no term limits is too much of a loosening of that. I think we could find something better that would allow them to serve a little bit longer, but not open that door to 8 years of the exact same students on the committee. So, Ms. Pickard.
Yeah, I agree with Madam Chair with all of her points. You know, having 3 high school students and above, if you're looking for applicants, I think asking someone to make a 1-year commitment is reasonable. Possibly we could look at something like the term is 1 year with the opportunity to serve a second if you choose. But beyond that, I think we're limiting this group to a small number of students in the county and not opening up that opportunity for our, large numbers of young adults. That's concerning to me. So I agree with you. We should work on some amendments.
Any other comments? All right. Okay. We'll be in touch with Mr. Hunt to work on that one.
Sounds good.
Next is bill number 2425. This is your bill, Mr. Smith, about regional commercial complexes.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. This bill, actually, I do have some meetings coming up with the administration on this as well, to sort of find out what the nuances are. But what I will say is that this bill actually originated from conversations with parents who were graduating from Arundel Mills Mall. So the term regional commercial complex that is in this particular bill applies to one facility. It is the Arundel Mills complex. And what it does allow, after those conversations with the parents, I think when they all graduated, one of the first things they did was go out in the parking lot, in the lobby, in the parking lot, Costco. So in just about everyone's pictures when they graduated, you see happy students in Costco. And so it always drove me nuts when I saw that. I was like, oh, that's such a beautiful moment. Is there any way we could create other opportunities for that complex to do some enhancements of attributes over there? And so talking to Gene and the general manager as well as the casino operators, this actually came up as to allow some flexibility in what they can do. Part of that was the parking constraints that were assigned to an account and how it was all combined together. And so hopefully in the future, obviously we'll discuss this with the administration and get some feedback from the council as well. Maybe there could be another structure that is over there that, as these folks leave out of it, that's not just used for graduation, but for other things. Because I also said to the mall complex, as if you don't evolve, you die, right? If you don't amend your amenities, if you don't add new sort of features, things like that, you become, outdated. And so my goal is to prevent the Arundel Mills Mall complex from becoming outdated and to ensure that they are staying current with trends that are occurring throughout the nation and providing them that flexibility to be able to do that. And so that's bless you, that's where this bill originated from. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Ms. Pickard?
Is regional commercial complex, is that a term that's assigned to that area? Is that a codified term that can't be applied anywhere else?
Yes, it was originally adopted in bills 6298 and I think 8098. So it's an old piece of legislation, and it was specifically done for the Arundel Mills Mall complex to allow it to develop with some flexibility as a large regional entertainment center.
And if they are interested in reimagining or expanding, or could that be done under redevelopment, or they're looking to, or I'm just curious what they could do now without any legislation to put in additional, I'm not sure what their plan is, but expand their conference center or put in additional residential structures or dwellings. Would that be a redevelopment situation?
That could be if it met the definition of redevelopment.
Because it's certainly 40% impervious over there.
Right. So they're not limited to, the types of renovations or expansions or anything that any other project could do in the county. But I think the particular issue that this bill is trying to address is related to parking requirements and the ability to locate them in other places on the regional commercial complex. Right now, the code requires parking to be located on the lot with the use that it's going to be serving, and there's also a distance requirement. And so I think that some of these nuances related to how the parking is located and designed are what we would like to work with the sponsor on to make sure that it's all reflected in the legislation.
Madam Chair, have we done any parking requirement analysis in the code? I mean, I think there's this general understanding that we're a little overparked in Anne Arundel County, as parking minimums are outdated when we look at malls and, vast amounts of parking. Will that come into play as y'all discuss this? Is Arundel Mills overparked?
I don't know if I can answer that question right now. There may be some parking lots in part of that whole complex that are underutilized. I'm not sure.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Anything else from the administration?
No, I don't think so. As the sponsor said, we're trying to get a meeting set up.
Okay.
Hopefully later this week to work on this.
All right. Thank you all very much. So we will now have a discussion about the council's rules and procedures, our draft that we have for that. As much as we enjoy your company, Mr. Hunt, you won't be needed to weigh in on this.
I take no offense.
So, all the council members, we do have a draft of the rules. So for the general public to know, this is, the council met in small groups over the past year to review our rules and make suggestions and updates for what's coming through. And so today will be our discussion combining all of the input together where we can talk about this and come up with our plan moving forward. So I guess we'll just go page by page, and if anybody has any questions, on the first page we have added that any amendment to amend these rules will require a 5-member vote of the council, so it would need to be a supermajority. So you can't. Any questions? All right, I'm going to keep going. Y'all turn on the lights if you've got a question on that. Again, we move on to filling a vacancy. We've changed some of the wording just to clarify to majority of the council. We have added a section if there is a vacancy on the council that the council will take up to 25 successive ballot calls. I think people may remember, Mr. Smith, how many was it back in the day for you?
It was like 106.
It was in the hundreds, and I think that we agree a limitation needs to be placed on that. So the suggestion is to move that to 25 successive ballot roll calls. We've added an entire section on filling a vacancy for a member of the Board of Education. That was changed in state law, and that's something that we need to codify into our own rules for that. So, all right, no comments. We'll keep going. So the next session is where we talk about the annual review for our staff. And I did want to bring up a point of discussion on this one. We have currently that the administrative officer and the legislative council, so for the public's notice, the county council appoints 3 employees, appointed positions to the county council itself, the administrative officer, the legislative council, and the deputy administrative officer. Currently in the code, in our rules, it states that the AO and the legislative council shall be a subject to an annual evaluation prepared by the chair of the county council and 1 member of the county council from a different political party. A suggested change would be the deputy administrative officer shall be subject to an annual evaluation prepared by the administrative officer, the chair of the county council, and 1 member of the county council from a different political party. The question I have and throw out for discussion for my colleagues is, given that we have 3 appointed officers, should they all be subject to the same evaluation process rather than have a different one for the assistant administrative officer? The difference is that the administrative officer is also evaluated by the deputy administrative officer is also evaluated by the administrative officer, whereas the other 2 positions are just by the council. Do we want to have that change? Do you have that difference between our appointed employees? So, just throwing out there, Mr. Smith.
I mean, if I were the administrative officer, I probably would want to have the ability to provide a evaluation to my deputy. So I don't necessarily see me personally, any concern. Even though the president appoints the deputy secretary of defense, right? But that person still gets reviewed and counseled by the secretary of defense. And so, me personally, I don't see any issues with the administrative officer counseling their number 2.
So here's another thing to throw out, because we all work so closely together and everybody's in there. We seek input from all council members for the evaluations for these. Would we want to include input from all the appointed officers for each appointed person's evaluation? So for instance, the AO would weigh in for the legislative council and the administrative officer and vice versa, so that we have that input from the people who are working together each day. That's another thing to throw out. Ms. Fiedler.
I'm not answering that question right now because you just threw it out there. I need to think about that. But I do agree with Mr. Smith, because I think in all of the county departments and even in the private sector, when you have a head and then a deputy, the deputy has to be able to step into that role should something happen with the head, and only the head of the department knows the capabilities because they work so closely together of that individual. So I do think that the way that it is, I'm comfortable with the way it's written right now.
So, anyone?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I just have a suggestion for consideration. I'm not even sure if I necessarily, would support this idea, but I'm throwing it out there for consideration. Perhaps for the deputy administrative officer, could it be at the discretion of the council, whether or not, whether the administrative officer weighs in, that way?
We would make that decision each year, you're saying? That would be at our discretion?
It's an idea.
Ms. Fiedler, I mean, not Ms. Fiedler, Ms. Pickard.
I think the ad hoc personnel committee that we've put together is another great place to chew on this, the structure within the legislative branch here, and how some things need to be clarified and written down. And, as we look at real both organizational structure and as we expand and add employees, but also and then how the org chart looks. I think getting that outside perspective, since none of us are personnel experts that I'm aware of, I think that'll be helpful. So while we may pass these rules as they are here, we may be coming back with a resolution to shore up some things that come out of that committee. That's my thought.
And I will say that the ad hoc personnel committee, one of the things that they are tasked with is to come up with some recommendations around employee evaluations. So that could be, that this could be an area that's revisited in the future. Again, we're making rules changes, but they are not, rules can be amended at any time. Mr. Volke.
With a vote of 5. With a vote of 5.
If this passes, with a vote of 5.
Right. In section B, actually 3, I think, should it be lowercase for the Roman numerals instead of uppercase?
So with amendments, it's all capitalized. When we go to do the enrolling, it'll be
lowercase.
Yes.
Gotcha. All right, just checking. Thank you.
So, Ms. Rodvian.
I was going to suggest maybe if this is something that the ad hoc committee would be looking at, maybe we hold off making a change to this section and wait for their recommendation rather than changing it and then perhaps changing it again.
I think that makes sense moving forward. So, all right, continuing on. Again, small. Let's see. Oh, I don't have page numbers. Move forward to section 3105. There is a suggestion. Yes. Oh. Yeah. What is that? What is that one? Legislative days. Yes. So, the question has arisen normally. Currently, the council does not conduct any business after 12 midnight because the legislative day has ended. However, there is discussion that the legislative day could actually be a 24-hour day period. So not just that date itself, but if we started a meeting at 7 p.m., it would go till the next day at 7 p.m., which means that we would be able to continue voting and doing business past midnight if that were to come up. So have at it, folks. Ms. Rodvian.
I like this change. I think the arbitrary midnight clock is just that. It's arbitrary, and we should be able to continue our business as within a time frame as we needed, not constrained by a clock.
Gerd.
I agree. I think having served on the Board of Education and having had friends and neighbors sleep on my couch until 3 a.m. babysitting my children while we were still, it is an arbitrary endpoint, and it keeps, we are all busy people, and we have only so many legislative days based on the charter, I believe. So allowing us to finish that business that hour or two that we might need is, I think, something we need to think about. If this is the way legally to do it, I'm for it.
Mr. Volke.
I'm not in love with it. I mean, so we haven't gone till midnight in a while, right? I mean, it's, yeah, I was going to say early on in many of us, our first term, huh? You're bringing something back. with just putting that to the side for a second. I mean, I understand the idea of not going past midnight, but we've adjusted for that before. When we have something that we think may bring a lot of people out, we've moved our time earlier, and we've started at 6 o'clock. We could always start at 5 o'clock. I'm just not in love with trying to make decisions at 2 in the morning. Like, I mean, I have seen the way that some people in this council operate at 2 in the morning, and it's not always with the most sort of clear-eyed discretion in terms of our ability to function. So that's part of my worry. Also, we don't have a filibuster option, right? But in the minority, like, there have been times where we have sort of run out the clock, and that has been a strategy, and people know that that's happening. But at the same time, if we do this, that will completely be erased. If you want to erase that, I understand, but I'm just suggesting this does protect the minority to a certain degree to create something that you can do to slow things down. Okay, that's what I had.
Ms. Rodvian.
I don't know. I'd have to think more about the sort of using the 12 p.m. as a filibuster. I mean, I have definitely seen it. Yes, I've seen it. Whether or not I think that that's something we should keep, I will consider that, or I will consider that separately. But I think we could also allow the session to go, or the legislative part of our meeting to go past midnight, and accommodate for anticipated long meetings by starting earlier. That wouldn't necessarily have to rule out, like, hey, we can tell this is going to be a long one. We've got 70 people signed up to testify, a week ahead of time, or whatever, where we know 70 people are going to sign up to testify. So we could still make that adjustment with the hopes that, yes, we would all like to be home by midnight, but
it's kind of,
most of our sessions haven't gone far. Like, have we ever made it past 1? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, in this council,
mm-hmm. Not this term.
I mean, but with. Mm-hmm. I probably slept through that. That's why. I'm kidding.
So, Ms. Ledbetter, but just one thing I want to add. The legislative day would go through the next day, but that could also mean that we could recess at midnight and meet again in the morning and still be continuing the day. So it doesn't necessarily have to go till 4 in the morning, but it would allow us the flexibility that we would have a longer time to complete that session. So that just as an added note. Ms. Ledbetter.
I think one of my concerns, I share Mr. Volke's concern about we're all human. We're 7 very human individuals, and our ability to make complex, detailed decisions after midnight. I think we should all be concerned about our ability to do so. But also, on the other side of that is I have heard, being a member of the public during those late night council meetings, and also during late night Board of Education meetings, oftentimes what I heard from fellow members of the public was a frustration that, citizens have jobs and lives, and that their ability to watch and to participate and to know what's going on is severely limited when the body goes past midnight, because people have to go to bed and go to work, and then they miss out on that ability to watch and know what's going on. And I heard frustration from fellow citizens during that process, and I think that's something that we should also just consider is how accessible are we really after midnight to the average citizen? And so maybe Ms. Hummer's idea is an interesting compromise. Just things I think that we should consider.
Ms. Fiedler.
Thank you. I echo the sentiments of Mr. Volke and Ms. Ledbetter. In addition to our constituents maybe having to leave early, those that do stay, I know in recent meetings I've looked out at the audience and seen a few constituents nodding off, and are they coming from South County and trying to drive home at 2:00 in the morning? I certainly don't want to put anybody in harm's way because we're going very late. But also I think we've done it once in this term, maybe. We did it, I would say, half a dozen times in a very short period of time last term. And they are brutal meetings, and you can, depending on how your day went earlier on and the day that you have the next day, it can be difficult to concentrate after a certain point in time.
This is a worthwhile conversation for sure. Thinking about the fact that we are technically still considered part-time in Anne Arundel County, and the majority or supermajority of this council have full-time employment. So being able to recess and come back in the morning is not necessarily an option. But what if we compromised in the way these rules are written? And I don't know if this works legally, but what if we created certain situations that would allow us to move past midnight if we have a bill that's about to die, or we took a vote with a supermajority because there's a bill coming up next after midnight that's on its last legs, or some, I don't know, some sort of in between. So it wasn't just arbitrarily we can go beyond midnight. I don't know if that works. We might need to come together and think about that. But obviously you can't write rules for every hypothetical situation. So it's a little... Or if we just took a vote, if we had a vote to go beyond midnight, we left this in with a vote, and that conversation could happen. You know what I mean? With a motion, we're allowing ourselves to legislate beyond midnight because bill number 6826 is going to expire if we don't deal with it tonight, kind of thing. We could decide what the issue is. Does that make sense?
Mr. Smith.
I'm sure I was actually going to say the exact same thing, believe it or not, to some sort of compromise. She hit her light first, and so I was thinking of maybe a vote supermajority. What she said.
Yeah. Minds think alike, Mr. Smith. There we go. But maybe a supermajority vote to go beyond midnight on the rare occasions we do. I will speak to from experience that having sat in on board meetings that Board of Education meetings, that one that went till 3:00 in the morning, and it was about the budget. We did not make the best decisions at 3:00 in the morning on that budget. I mean, you look back on it and it was clear people were misunderstanding what they were voting for. And so we weren't being good legislators at that point. And so we don't want to have to go through, but we also don't want to, if we have a night that we're going long simply because 300 people came up to speak, that we don't want good legislation to die because we simply ran out of time. So I think, yes, if we could come up with some language that say with a supermajority vote at certain, that we could extend beyond midnight, I think that would be good. Ms. Pickard.
And that certainly does allow for the minority to play their strategy game on a bill they're trying to kill.
That's right. Yeah. Either side of the aisle. Exactly. But you know, we all know sometimes, even with the best of intentions and plannings, we may run out of time for good stuff. Ms. Rodbian.
Thank you. I was actually going to suggest that we make it not a super majority, because then we're sort of, creating, a way we're sort of allowing that. I guess maybe that's the point. I don't know. We'd be allowing we'd be allowing the obstructionists to kind of determine the outcome of the bill that otherwise might get, I don't know, further consideration.
Well, you make a good point there, because if we require a supermajority to go extend along, that's more than we require on the actual bill that we want to vote on.
I almost think it should be the opposite. It should be I don't know if we have any votes that only require 3.
We don't for vote purposes, but if we, like when certain grant funds need to come down before the council, you all get to review them, and only 3 have to request it to go through a resolution for a public hearing. So there are mechanisms in place where it does only require 3 to move something forward in that circumstance.
So I was actually going to suggest that, and I also wanted to echo, I think I testified at that morning. I know I've testified at the Board of Ed in the 2 a.m. hour. And agree that not always the wisest decisions are made, and definitely have been on the constituent end of having to get up and work the next day after being at a meeting at ungodly hours. So I definitely appreciate that point of view.
So, Mr. Volke.
I think Mr. Smith was first.
Mr. Smith.
I'm simply going to say, I just want us to be mindful that when we create knives, they sometimes cut both ways. And so while we may be in majority one day, we can be in the minority another day. And the reason I think it's important to maintain some sort of leverage when it comes to the voting on this particular thing is, I think in most cases, if there was a legitimate bill, it's rare that I think any minority party is going to be obstructing a continuance of that bill. Also, I think it's important for the sponsor of the bill to really look and understand the life of their bill. And so if they're waiting to the last moment to have a bill expiring, then they've managed that life of that bill incorrectly, the sponsor of the bill. Look, I know Mr. Volke can be very creative, but there may be days when the shoe can be on the other foot, and we're I don't know. I'm always mindful that knives cut both ways, and while we may be in the majority today, we could be in the minority tomorrow, and I wouldn't want us to. I wouldn't want us to have a voice in whether or not we continue with it being the supermajority, instead of if it wasn't, then the 4 Republican R's could be like discount anything we say. So that's my only thing. So, that it cuts both ways.
Mr. Volke.
I'll only add this. I appreciate Mr. Smith's comments. I think that one power that I have seen underutilized in my time on the council is the ability of the chair as the presiding officer to set the agenda, right? And so to the extent that there is a very worthwhile piece of legislation that the chair, as a member of the majority party, feels needs to be heard early in the night to make sure that it gets passed or that it has the possibility of expiring, the chair has the ability to set the agenda. The agenda is never set until the meeting starts, at which point then to change the agenda requires a vote of 5 members of the council to be able to reorient the agenda. So that's a power, that is an ability of the chair that I have seen underutilized in the council in my roughly 6 years here, that I think could protect against this concern, to the extent that there's a worry that somehow something, because of just mere numerical order, finds itself at the back of the agenda and is then being pushed off. You want to add something, Ms. Schultz?
If you don't mind, I believe that Madam Chair and I have worked hard to put other bills forward, and you'll probably have seen that they have been out of order lately. But also in the circumstance that we are in now, with all region plans going at the same time, on January 14th, we did introduce a lot of legislation that will all be expiring at the same time. So my only concern from a business standpoint is that there could be times where a lot of heavy legislation, doesn't matter what order we put it in, could still extend past midnight.
So going back to the things cut both ways, I guess that would, again, I would advocate for the idea of a 3-vote, a majority, I don't know what you call that, a 3-vote threshold to, allow a meeting to go forward. So if the minority had a bill that they wanted to go forward, they could allow it to go forward. The majority couldn't sort of use that as a leverage against them. To sort of shut down even having a conversation about the bill or a public hearing or what else might be going on. Which I guess what I'm expressing here is the idea that I don't like the idea of procedural things being the reason that bills don't get full consideration. I think regardless of who introduces legislation, it's worthy of the 7 of our attention. And while I certainly understand, Mr. Volke, that power to sort of set the agenda has been underutilized, I feel like it's been underutilized in the spirit of bipartisanship to not turn it into a partisan tool. And I almost think that maybe we should codify that or, put that in our rules to say, it shall be not used in a partisan manner. Now that could get tricky in terms of determining what is partisan and what's not partisan, but I feel like in good faith, it hasn't been used as that kind of tool. And I think the more that we hear bills on the merits, the happier the public is going to be. The public doesn't like it when we're just sort of, I don't know, you always hear it, oh, they got off on a technicality. Well, we'd sort of be shutting down public debate on a technicality from the public's perception. And so I think the less we do that, the better. So, having ways to extend our session beyond midnight or go into the next day, even if it weren't in the morning. I definitely understand with the, the idea of like trying to pick up, having a recess that would go until 9 o'clock in the morning. And then folks are like having to shuffle to manage their work schedules, maybe 5 o'clock in the afternoon, still leaves us 2 hours to finish our business. So just throwing out lots of thoughts and ideas.
Okay.
So I wanted to ask, actually, our administrative officer, remind me of when technically the agenda is set. So when does the chair have to determine the order of bills?
We will set a preliminary agenda that just goes usually in numerical order, but we can change it. We've done it up to the day of, I feel like, to where we actually print and set the agenda. We try to post it by noon, no later than 4 p.m. on the day of the meeting. But if we, over the weekend, realize that a lot of people have signed up to testify or anything like that, be in constant communication of maybe this should be set. Or even if it's been printed and such, it isn't until that line item is on the agenda where the agenda actually closes that we could change the order.
Okay.
And ways that we've changed the agenda recently, just as examples, when we had the Boy Scout, the BSA group here, we moved the pig bill up in the agenda so that they weren't planning to stay the whole night, but we thought that was something they might find more interesting. So that was to accommodate them.
For entertainment factor.
Right. When we have big bills like region plans that are going to take a long time, and we have, say, a bill that requires staff to be here, but it's literally going to take 2 minutes, we have moved up those out of consideration for the staff so they don't have to sit here for hours. So to my knowledge, it hasn't ever been done for a partisan reason. It's really more out of consideration for staff and public who are going to be here to try to move things along so people don't have to stay later. It's more of a convenience type thing, but it can be used. We can use it strategically to say, okay, these are bills that are expiring and we want to make sure this one gets plenty of time so we can schedule this first that time. It can be used that way as well. Yes, Ms. Schultz.
And typically when that happens, it would fall in numerical order based on the way that they were introduced. So ones that would expire earlier would be the ones first on the agenda just based on that. I had something else to say, but I forget.
All right.
Right. So, thank you, Madam Chair. So these are our rules. So as we look to, maybe there might be, from this discussion, there could be sort of competing amendments on this section of these bills. So we'll just have to we can't really determine that right now. Like, well, we're talking about it in work session. But some people don't want to go past midnight at all. I'm getting the feeling that yes. Okay.
As we put out there, there's the opportunity to put in something that we could have a vote to, in certain circumstances,
some sort of trigger.
Go beyond that. And I kind of like that the hard stop does make us be more efficient on certain things. It does limit some things on there. So if it's only used, I think we've been good about trying to get the actual legislative part done by midnight, but to have another option for extraordinary circumstances might be there. Ms. Schultz.
I would just also like to weigh in that, oh my goodness, my brain today is not working properly. In the event that something is going to be delayed, and we know that there's going to be like lots of amendments for those bills, we have started at 6 o'clock to allow for the extra time. However, the only time when that doesn't work is if we find something out too late, because I am required to advertise a time as such. And so a lot of work goes in if we don't have those facts at the time that we are submitting ads to be addressed to the public. So this, if it's voted on, could be another option for us to continue to conduct business that we weren't necessarily anticipating ahead of time to start earlier.
Okay, let's continue on. That we do have the active shooter thing when we get done. So yeah, it's scheduled for when we finish up. There is a recommendation to remove the section 3105, participation by public, to just take out that section altogether.
Just to be clear, so that no one watching thinks we're removing public participation, we're merely moving it to a different section of the rules. Okay, just let somebody hear that the
I
wrong
should have
way.
said that. We are not saying no public participation. No one, please, think that that is the case.
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
would we then be numbered that we go from 3104 to 3106? Should we renumber 3106 to 3105?
Yes, that will all this will be correctly formatted before it comes to us as a resolution.
Okay.
Yes. So we continue on. So if you go to section 4106, this is where participation by the public has been moved to. Correct. I don't believe.
It's better organized.
It's better. But I think it essentially remains the same.
That's right.
All right. Section 4107, participation by the news media. There is a recommendation that sub B, letter B, be removed, because it says that, we could recess to speak to the media. We kind of already have that. I don't know that we need that in the rules. Mr. Volke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question on section 4-113. So it looks like that may be there twice, unless I'm misunderstanding the purpose. It looks like on the first page, it sort of covers it in blue, and then on the next page, it has the same language. It's different, but it's in red. Are these two different versions, or what is this?
So two groups came up with two options, so I put them both in there.
Actual section. Don't jump ahead to that one just yet. Okay. So you're confusing us, Mr. Volke. Okay. So any comments on the taking out the recess for the news media, which we don't really do. We don't really take a recess to talk to the media. We might take a recess for other things, and we may speak to the media at that time, but we have never done a specific recess to speak to the media, and I'm not certain we want to start that. No offense, media. We're still talking to you, but not necessarily in the middle of a meeting. Section 4112, the voting. So this is where we get into the virtual. The next couple of sections are about holding virtual participation in meetings. So what are our thoughts on this? We have two. The one in blue at section 4113, generally the county council may allow members of the public to participate in a legislative session, blah, 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 in a virtual or remote format. The other option says generally if the technology is available, the county council may allow members of the public to participate in a virtual format. So I'm not, Ms. Fiedler.
Thank you. So, I mean, a few minutes ago, we were talking about whether or not we go beyond midnight. One thing that we did not discuss, and it's been a while since we met in groups, but I don't think we discussed, okay, if we do open up virtual testimony and we have an influx of folks testifying virtually, what does that do to our timeline? And I think might be Montgomery County, they have created a lottery system to address this very matter, which I don't know if we want to go down that path either, because then we're picking and choosing through a lottery system who can testify. So just something to think about.
Right. Yes, on the lottery issue, I'm with you that I don't believe that we could say a lottery just for the virtual participation. We'd have to do it for everyone, and I'm not a fan of limiting public testimony in any way. If we want to have, to allow everyone to speak who wants to speak. So I wouldn't be for a lottery myself. So Ms. Rodvian.
I was going to agree with that sentiment that I'm really not crazy about the whole lottery system. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought, but I was thinking maybe this is something we could do on a trial basis, do for a period of time to see how it worked out, and then, figure out, is it working? Is it, taking is it adding hours and hours to our meetings? Because now, of course we want people to be able to testify, and I think there have been legitimate accessibility issues raised, especially from I always think of like the furthest south in South County is, but actually pretty far north. You have to fight lots of traffic to get here, even though the distance might be shorter. So the idea that we're more accessible by creating a virtual option. It's not the idea that we want to shut down testimony. It's we want to have meeting lengths that are reasonable. And so how do we balance that? So I kind of like the idea of virtual testimony and maybe think it's something we should try if and when. I don't know what the status is of the technology. I know that has been an issue, and then it might require additional staffing. So,
Mr. Smith.
I just wanted to bring up that, and when we were discussing this a year and a half ago, I think in my head, there was two pieces to this, and I totally agree with your sentiment on the public piece of it. But I also want to kind of put out there for us to chew on virtual option for the council's participation portion. So, for example, I'm in the process of having to transfer units here in the next 60 days, military units. And that may require me to do stints a month away, or for a month, that may take me away from Maryland. Can I still participate virtually in our count? I'm talking about the public's participation, but our road. Is there a mechanism or a way, which we've done before when I went on a similar instance, but can we codify that where maybe we enhance our technology so that when you all are here and I'm here, or if somebody has a legitimate reason they're going to be away, maybe it's work, if you go to some conference, not even a conference, but something that's significant, and you're away, but you still want to participate in the council meeting, that we have a virtual option to participate in this live function. That's also something I would hope we would discuss or consider as we modify these rules. Or hospitalized.
We don't have anything in here about that now, do we? And and that is an oversight, because I know that came up before when you were serving. I do think we need to add that for participation in meetings and voting by council members, but I think it needs to be narrowly defined. I think I'm not for saying if somebody is out of town, on vacation or at a conference, but I think if you truly physically, if you're hospital or homebound, for some reason, or on military leave. To me, those would be the exceptions to have in there. Ms. Pickard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have had council members participate via phone during COVID. So I think we can work that through. I didn't realize that that wasn't in our rules. I do want to emphasize the timetable we have, and I think I've shared a story, which I will not share again publicly, about a public meeting that had interference from a virtual situation that was incredibly disturbing. Not our council. So I think we have to be careful with what we did during COVID was an audio. It was no video, it was only audio, because we wanted to keep, the FCC, the FCC issues. This is broadcasted on TV. So there's some of that. I think for me, we have so many touches with the public. We know when we've gotten 300 emails about a bill. I'm not actually sure all 300 of those, they've emailed us. They may or may not plan to come down to the chambers to be present. I'm not exactly sure what the benefit is of having them virtually chime in to say their 2 minutes that they could have emailed us. We can talk about it. It's not a give and take, right? It's not a debate. We're not having a town hall. This is our business meeting of the council. So reminding the public that this is where we do business. But I do think if we add a virtual option or the possibility of a virtual option, we need to take very seriously the technology issues and the safety issues, whether we're able to mute and who's able to mute someone who's inappropriate, or their background is inappropriate, or they're unclothed, whatever the issue is. We need to be careful of that. If we're looking to move forward with rules, this may be something we want to table or think about again. I don't know. There's a lot of nuances to it.
Yes.
Could I just throw out another suggestion for consideration, that maybe we limit the number of virtual speakers, and maybe that piece could be by lotteries, because I do remember, I remember a meeting during COVID where I think it was like an all day meeting, and it was something very, 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 very concerning to the public. And so we really did have hours and hours of, I'm not imagining this, right? But so maybe, and that was different because no one could testify in person. So that was a different situation. But where there is an in-person option, that maybe we could just set a limit on the number of individuals who are allowed to testify, we first come, first serve, or a lottery or something like that. To kind of, to sort of allow virtual participation, but prevent us from being overwhelmed by, and having our meeting, like you said, it is our business meeting, but we also have public hearings that we want input. So, maybe some sort of something to rein it in, so it's not unlimited.
And let me just, before I call on Ms. Ledbetter, just to add, all the proposed language, the different version of this, say may allow. None of this is saying that we will do this or we will begin this right away. This is all giving us that option, and that we can work out, if and when we choose to move this way, that we can work out more details. But this is just putting the rules that this is a possibility that could be allowed moving forward. Ms. Ledbetter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Circling back to Mr. Smith's point about the ability of a council member, and Ms. Hummer's point about putting the kind of left and right lateral limits on that, I just wanted to throw out one of the things that maybe we should consider allowing is extenuating circumstances. So unforeseen. I'm thinking of if there was a council member maybe was traveling for work, they got stranded in Denver because of a snowstorm and couldn't get here on a Monday, that sort of thing.
Kind of, perhaps it could be put in, we give some specifics, and then, but add at the discretion of the chair.
Something to just,
something so
you
that
know,
it's not. I'm not a fan of saying remote voting if you're on the beach in Cancun, but yes, if your flight is delayed and you got stuck in
Yeah,
Denver,
you-
that's a
you know,
different
you were
situation.
supposed to fly home on Saturday. It's 48 hours. I mean, it does happen. You know, you tried to be reasonable. Things happened. I think some allowance for that should be built in.
Right. Not, you don't get to vote while you're at Disney. Other people go to Disney besides you, Mr. Volke, just not as often. So, oh, what? You have never been to Disney? Oh my goodness. Sorry. Okay, we're digressing enormously as we move into Disney. Okay, we're going to move on from this section for now. So we move on to 5103. There's a question about I'm saying it wrong. Substantive amendment. Yes. We have a recommendation. Is that a recommendation from you, Ms. Schultz, or from you, Ms. Beach? Ms. Beach. So, any questions on that, Mr. Lawyer?
Well, so I literally wrote, who suggested this?
Oh.
But can you give us the insight or the benefit of your insight on this and what you're thinking? Sorry to put you on the spot.
So, if you have a bill that is expiring, giving you an ability to amend it in that last meeting. If something comes up that would be substantive to that change, that would be significant to that bill. Your bills are out there for a month. And when we've looked at other jurisdictions, kind of doing the comparison of rules, the other jurisdictions state that, well, I shouldn't say all of them. Some of them say that the substantive amendment may be introduced on the day that it's also voted on, but if it's a decision of the body, whether it is a substantive amendment. So some of them, because it's substantive, it has varying definitions.
Okay, so I think I understand what you're getting at, and so I would follow up with my thoughts on it would be this. The benefit of the way that it's done now is that there can never be a vote on a piece of legislation that the public doesn't see the final form of the piece of legislation before we vote. That's the way we do it now. That's the benefit of the way we do it now. If this were to pass and we were to change this, then I believe we could wind up in situations, well, and you're not suggesting changing it, by the way. This is a discussion point, I think, so to be clear about that. But if we were to go with this type of suggestion where we allow a substantive amendment to change a bill on the last day that a bill is then voted on, we could be in a different universe than the one we've existed in for 60 years that would allow a bill to be voted on in final form that the public had never seen before. So I think from a good government standpoint, sort of a transparency in how we operate standpoint, even if other bodies are doing it in a different way, I think we're actually a model for sort of transparent government, because we can never do what the state legislature does, where they change bills on the fly on the floor at 11:59 p.m. and pass bills that affect the entire state, and no one had any chance to weigh in on them. That's something that we avoid by doing it this way. So I do think that the framers of the charter and the people who put together the rules the first time, if it was them or the first council or whoever, was maybe onto something with this to ensure that from a transparency standpoint, everything was out there in front of everybody before we voted. So I'm not a big fan of this, even though I appreciate the discussion point on it, because if I'm following you correctly, I would not want to go into that thicket.
I think those are fair points. I think if there is ever a change like this, I would also be doing recommending a change in how amendments are filed and submit it to the public. So I would move up like a filing deadline for amendments that they're made public prior to, several days prior to the legislative voting on it, as an alternative to also agreeing with what you're saying.
Madam Chair. Yes. I agree 95% with Mr. Volkey. The one exception for me is comp zoning because it's only done every 10 years. Given if we were to do this for just one particular type of legislation, that's challenging. I still remember a family on Broadneck Road who were at the last, I had no time to do an amendment, and they have to wait 8 years now. But it could also open up Pandora's box for comp rezoning. Interesting idea here, something to chew on, I guess.
No, go.
I was going to suggest maybe in addition to this, that it could only be done by a supermajority to sort of provide an extra layer of protection for the public to say, look, if you can get 5, then it really is, we're sort of saying it really is in the interest of the public to amend this bill in this way, and that it's got, broad support. I don't know, just throwing it out there. Because something like that, something where, like, I think that is something maybe that would have been supported by a supermajority because it was on such a tight time frame.
Okay. All right.
Chair.
I know yes, ma'am.
Sorry, I just wanted to make a comment. I was about to make the comment that I think our administrative officer just did, is that in some cases for comp rezoning, you would still have a requirement of a sign, so I don't know that solves it. I think my only concern about the idea of some and not others is that it becomes really hard for the general public to understand and follow. Right now, it's very clear. These are the rules. It applies universally. They're not hard to explain, which means that they're not hard to understand. And I think that's, when it comes to good governance, there's a lot to be said for that. This, if this, then that sort of flow chart, depending upon the bill and the circumstance, I think could get messy for the general public following what we're doing and having confidence that we're following the right steps at the right time. Just my 2 cents.
I'm going to move us on quickly because I've got to get on something right now. And so we're almost done. As we look in the next sections, 5104 and those, it's some, most of it is language adding in, for instance, adding in digital to make that more up to date, taking out that just by roll call vote rather than having to say yay or nay. And then we do have one under section 5106 about the time limit for consideration, just clarifying a bit that, for instance, a resolution for sympathy or congratulations, we don't have to put it out for 7 days to vote, that we can do that ahead of time. So we will get this put together and send out to everyone, and when everybody can take a look and consider amendments to a resolution for that. Is there any other business any council member would like to bring before the county council at this time? Okay, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. County council is adjourned until Monday, March 17th, 2025 at 7 p.m. and our next legislative session in our chambers. Thank you very much.